Just Pierce Brosnan, she was the devil herself. At 72, Pierce Brosnan carries something most people never see when they look at him. They see the tuxedo. They see the easy smile. They see James Bond. But behind all of that polish is a story that starts in rural Ireland with a teenage mother, an absent father, and a little boy who spent years learning what it meant to be left behind. At 72, Pierce finally put words to the wound he had carried the longest. Nobody expected what came out. He called her the devil herself. What did she do? Why did he stay silent for decades? The answer cuts far deeper than anyone imagined. Pierce Brendan Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, County Louth, Ireland. His mother, May Smith, was only 19 when he arrived. She had married carpenter Thomas Brosnan just 9 months earlier. Then, while Pierce was still a baby, Thomas simply walked away. No scene. No final words. He disappeared from the life of a teenage mother and her newborn son, leaving them in post-war rural Ireland with nothing to fall back on. That loss came early, and it did not arrive alone. When Pierce was 4, his mother made the painful decision to leave Ireland and move to London to train as a nurse. She could only afford to return twice a year. So a little boy who had already lost his father now sought his mother for a few days every 6 months. She left him with his maternal grandparents, Philip and Kathleen Smith, in Navan, County Meath. Years later, Brosnan would describe the childhood as a lonely one. He said he remembered being a loner, very solitary, without the guidance of a mother or a father. Then the ground gave way again. By the time he was 6, both grandparents were dead. His father was absent. His mother was still across the Irish Sea. What followed was a childhood with no fixed center. He was passed from relative to relative, carrying the feeling that he belonged nowhere for long. Eventually, with no relative able to keep him, Pierce ended up in a lodging house run by a woman named Eileen Riley in a poor part of Navan. He was around 7 or 8. He slept on an iron bed at the far end of a long room shared with 3 grown men. A curtain was hung around his bed so the light would not disturb him. It is such a small detail, but it says everything about how he lived. Even school gave him little comfort. He attended a Christian Brothers school and later remembered the men there as dreadful human beings who taught him nothing but shame. Then, at 10, something finally shifted. His mother brought him to London to live with her. She had been seeing a kind man named Bill Carmichael, and she refused to marry him until Pierce approved. He said yes. Bill treated him with genuine warmth. For a boy who had spent years being moved around and left behind, that mattered more than any amount of money. Then in 1964, when Pierce was 11, Bill took him to see Goldfinger. Somewhere in that dark cinema, watching Sean Connery command the screen, a quiet dream took root. The child who had slept behind a curtain in a cramped lodging house had just seen the role that would one day change his life. He left school at 16 with no formal qualifications. Instead of accepting that as a ceiling, he enrolled at St. Martin's School of Art to train as a commercial illustrator. Then one day he saw a fire eater performing on a London street, left art school on the spot, learned fire eating himself, and started performing. That strange detour became the beginning of his life as a performer. He auditioned for the Drama Centre London, one of the most demanding acting schools in Britain, and won a place with no elite background, no theatrical connections, and no safety net. He trained for 3 years and graduated in 1975. After graduating, he worked as an assistant stage manager at York Theatre Royal and made his stage debut in 1976. In 1977, he played McCabe in Tennessee Williams' The Red Devil Battery Sign at the London Roundhouse. Directors noticed him. The presence was already there, even before the fame arrived. The bigger break came through Cassandra Harris, whom he met through mutual friends connected to Richard Harris. By the time they crossed paths on the set of The Mirror Cracked in 1980, Cassandra was already established in film circles. She was older by nearly 11 years, had 2 children from a previous marriage, and carried a depth and resilience that caught his attention immediately. They married on December 27, 1980. Through Cassandra's appearance in the Bond film For Your Eyes Only, Pierce met producer Albert Cubby Broccoli. Cassandra reportedly told Broccoli directly, my husband is your next Bond." She was placing her faith in him long before the wider world did. Their family deepened. In 1983, they had a son together, Sean. In 1986, after the death of Cassandra's children's biological father, Pierce legally adopted Charlotte and Christopher. They took his name. He did not do it for image. He did it because he meant it. Remington Steele launched on NBC in 1982 and made Brosnan a star in America. By 1986, Bond finally felt within reach. He signed on to replace Roger Moore. He did the wardrobe fittings and posed for publicity images. Cassandra had a bottle of champagne chilling at home. Then NBC exercised a contractual clause and called the show back. The Bond producers refused to wait. Timothy Dalton took the role instead. 6 additional episodes of Remington Steele before cancellation was the full cost of what he had nearly reached. Years passed. The Bond franchise itself fell into legal chaos from 1990 onwards and went silent for 6 years. When Timothy Dalton stepped away in 1994, Barbara Broccoli turned immediately back to Brosnan. This time the path held. GoldenEye opened on November 17, 1995, and earned $356 million worldwide against a $60 million budget. It became the highest-grossing Bond film since Moonraker in 1979. Bond was back with force, and Brosnan stood at the center of that return. His 4-film run as Bond, GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day earned a combined total approaching $1.5 billion worldwide. Die Another Day alone pulled in $431.9 million despite being torn apart by critics. Yet the role came at a personal cost. Brosnan later described signing on as making a pact with the devil, worldwide fame in exchange for being trapped inside an image he could never fully escape. The end came without ceremony. In 2004, while filming in the Bahamas, a phone call from his agents arrived first, followed by one from Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson. Broccoli was in tears. Wilson's words were brief: "You were a great James Bond, thank you very much." Brosnan answered with the same brevity and said goodbye. Later he described feeling utterly shocked, as though he had been kicked to the curb. What came next surprised everyone. In The Matador in 2005, he played a sad, self-destructive hitman who looked nothing like 007. The gamble earned him a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a Comedy at the 2006 ceremony. Then came Mamma Mia in 2008, which earned over $600 million worldwide. His singing became the subject of widespread mockery. His response was to lean into it completely. When asked about returning for the 2018 sequel, he said he loved his voice and would sing again whether people liked it or not. That attitude made him feel warmer to a new generation than Bond ever had. His personal life had been marked by a pattern of devastating loss. Cassandra died of ovarian cancer in December 1991 at 43, after 8 surgeries and 18 months of chemotherapy. Her mother had died of the same disease before her. In 2010, their adopted daughter Charlotte was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Pierce reportedly called specialists and sought out treatment centers across the world. She died on June 28, 2013, at 41, 2 years younger than her mother had been. At a 2014 Stand Up to Cancer event, he spoke publicly about holding Cassandra's hand as cancer took her life and then holding Charlotte's hand years later as the same illness took hers too. His family story took another turn in November 2025 when he was photographed in Notting Hill, London, dining at Dorian Restaurant with his sons Dylan and Christopher. That outing was the first time Pierce had been seen with Christopher in over 2 decades following years of estrangement that began after Christopher's struggles with cocaine and heroin addiction became too severe to ignore. Back in 2005, Brosnan had said Christopher was still very lost and had tested everybody in the family, but that he held on to faith. Hints of a thaw appeared in June 2022, when Brosnan mentioned Christopher in a heartfelt Father's Day post naming all his sons. The dinner in Notting Hill confirmed what that post had suggested. A family source said they looked like father and son again, sharing smiles and laughter, and that it felt like a new chapter. For a man who had spent so much of his life learning to hold on after loss, that reunion carried a quiet weight words could barely contain. News +2. In 2025, Brosnan's career was defined by range, playing a crime family patriarch in Mobland, appearing in Steven Soderbergh's spy thriller Black Bag, taking on a Western role in The Unholy Trinity, and lending his voice to the King of Kings. Then came The Thursday Murder Club, a Netflix adaptation of Richard Osman's beloved novel, directed by Chris Columbus. Brosnan starred as Ron Ritchie, a retired union leader and one of 4 retirees whose hobby of solving cold case murders leads them directly into a real-life mystery. He appeared alongside Helen Mirren, Ben Kingsley, and Celia Imrie and described himself as gobsmacked by the talent surrounding him on that set. Looking ahead, a cliffhanger reboot is set to open in theaters on August 28, 2026, with Brosnan in the lead, a project built deliberately around a more mature protagonist, trading youth for the kind of presence only someone with his history can bring. No Wave Journal +3